Hello and welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I have a really quick, easy project. This is like a last minute thing that I'm throwing together for Easter, and it is an envelope pillow cover or pillowcase, just for a little throw pillow. It's going to be Easter themed. So things that you'll need for this project, obviously thread. If you're sewing it by hand, you still need thread, but you can get a regular polyester thread. If you're doing it on a machine, then you'll want a thread that's actually made to go through your sewing machine. Sometimes hand sewing thread is too brittle. Scissors, good fabric scissors, and don't use your fabric scissors on anything but fabric or you'll dull them. I'm using some yarn. This is to make a little puffy tail. If you don't want anything sticking up off of the pillowcase and you just want it all to be nice and flush and just one piece of fabric, then whenever you trace out your little shape, if you're going to do a bunny like I did, then give him a little tail just on the little fabric piece. I decided I'm going to attach a tail separately. So this this yarn, it's like a velvet, almost a fluffy velvety yarn. This actually came from Dollar Tree. And I liked it because it was a little bit more poofy. And then of course you'll want some sort of a pattern. I'm using a little rabbit. And this I just did by hand. You can see all my little sketch marks on the back there, just on a piece of like construction paper or printer paper. And then I cut it out, and you'll want either a cotton fabric like I used, or you can pick up like a light canvas, like a home decor kind of fabric. I'm just using a quilting cotton. So I'm using this purple that I had left over from making my walkaway dress, and then I am using some floral also that was left over from that walkaway dress, and my floral is what I'm making my little bunny applique with. And then of course you'll want whatever pillow or pillow form that you're going to use. And the first step is going to be measuring your pillow form. So mine is 16 inches by 16 inches. So the way that you're going to cut out your piece, and we are doing this out of just one continuous piece of fabric. So you're going to cut it 16 wide, and then whatever seam allowance you're going to use, you're going to add into that. So I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so mine is 16.5 inches wide, because you have to allow for a 1/4 inch here and then a 1/4 inch on this side also for those seams. So mine is 16.5 inches wide. And then the length of your piece is going to be 2 times the length of your pillow form plus an additional 5 inches. So since mine is 16 inches wide and long, my length ends up being 37 inches altogether, because 2 times that 16 is your 32, and then you have to add that extra 5 inches. So mine is 37 inches long and 16.5 wide. So once you have that all cut, you can either choose to hem the shorter ends first, or you can choose to do your applique piece first. Hemming the ends, though, will keep them from fraying, so that is going to be our first step on this, although I did put my applique on off camera. And another thing about your appliques, there is a product called Heat and Bond or Wonder Under, but Heat and Bond is like a transferable and iron-on backing that actually has like a sticky back on it. So you iron that Heat and Bond onto your little applique piece, and then it has like a piece of paper on the back that you peel off, and it makes that like a sticker that you then stick down on top of whatever fabric you're going to put it on. I don't have any of that, so what I did to hold mine in place, because I'm going to show you how to do a satin stitch on your sewing machine for this, is I pinned everything down, and then I just took on my machine and did a regular straight stitch and just went around the very edges to hold the piece in place so it doesn't wrinkle or slide whenever I get ready to do that actual applique onto it. Okay, so to make our hem on the shorter edges, we're going to fold this over 1/2 inch. give it a good press down. And then you're going to fold it on itself where that edge was. And then you're going to press it again. That way all of the raw edge is enclosed. And then we're going to pin this hem in place. We're going to do this on both of the short ends, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine and stitch them down. Okay, so we have our hem pressed and pinned. So now all we're going to do is stitch it down. I have a open-toed foot on my machine because that's what we're going to use for our applique here in a minute. So I'm just going to leave it on instead of switching back and forth. And I am using 2 different colors of thread for this. I'm using purple that matches my material for all of my hems, but for my applique, I'm using like a yellow thread. You don't have to do that. You can use whatever kind you want. Switch that to the middle position there. And then all I did at the beginning and end of this is backstitch. Anytime you're sewing something, it's just good practice to always backstitch. That way your stitching doesn't come undone whenever you're moving the fabric later. But that is what our top hem looks like from the inside of the pillow, and then that is what you would see from the outside. So we're going to do that to the other short end, and then we are going to move on to our applique before we sew the pillowcase completely together. Okay, so now that we have both of our short ends hemmed, we are ready to put on our applique. Like I said, you would either have used your heat and bond, or if you're like me, just pinned it down and then you would have straight stitched around it. That way it's held in place. And I'm going to start on my rabbit's nose. And what you're going to do to do a satin stitch is you're going to select pull my camera off the stand there. So you're going to go with a zigzag stitch. So mine is number 4. So I'm going to set that. And then for your stitch length, if you can see here, we have length and then you have width. Looks like a little zigzag pattern. For your length, we're going to go down to a 0.1 on my machine. What you want for a satin stitch is you want each stitch to just butt right up next against, right up against the last stitch. So it just makes a nice, smooth, continuous stitch around. You'll see what it looks like once we get going here. So if you can see that stitching right there, it's like a nice, smooth, silky stitching where everything lays right up against each other. That's what we're going to do all the way around. And as you applique, especially if your design has a lot of curves, you want to take your time with it. Really make sure you're holding your fabric taut. Don't let it slip away from you or you'll get crinkles and wrinkles in it. And also, whenever you hit curves like here, you'll see I've raised my presser foot because now I need to turn this fabric. Just go slow, take your time as you go around your curves, lift your presser foot, readjust, and pivot your fabric as needed so that you keep that satin stitching right on the very edge of your applique. And I will show you this once I have gotten the rest of it finished. And I guess I forgot to mention, but the way to figure out where to place your applique is when you have your long piece laid out, you're going to measure to the center of it. So however long it is, go right in the middle and place a pin there. And that is where I decided to put my applique because that will make it dead center in the finished pillow. But we're going to do the same thing to measure where our opening for the pillow is going to be. So if I pull you back a little bit, I'm going to measure my piece. This is with the hem put in. I am at 34.5, so half of 34.5, half of 34 would be 17, so we're going to go to 17.25, which is right here. And you're going to stick a pin in that spot because that is how you are going to measure your two sides that are going to create the opening. So what you want to do, I'm just using a yardstick. I have a quilt ruler, but this is just what was closest to me. You're going to take one side and fold it over, and then the other to the middle, and you're going to go a little bit past that pin that we just stuck in, and from the pin itself to this folded part should be half the size of your pillow form minus a half an inch. So my pillow form is 16 inches, so half of that would be 8, and then minus that half an inch should be 7.5. So I'm going to set my folded edge at 7.5, and it looks like I am right on the money of reaching that pin. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this side in place. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Now we're going to fold our other side, and the same thing. We're going to run it a little bit past that pin, and from the pin to the folded edge should be 7.5 inches. And like I said, on these longer edges, I gave myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both of those, and then the pillow cover itself will be created, and then the last step is going to be to make the little bunny's tail and sew it on. Okay, I caught myself when I went to the sewing machine. When I showed you how to pin this opening, I did it with the pillow inside out. I had that this part here, the back of my stitching was facing inside of those folds. You want to do it the opposite way. So whenever you fold this to get ready to sew it, you want to have your piece that you want on the outside of the pillow actually on the inside, because then we're going to flip it right side out. So whenever you pin this with that applique on the inside, not this part. it looks like once it's sewn. That is the back of it there with that seam. And then your front. And then now what we're going to do is take this yarn and we are going to make the tail. So the way that we do that, or at least the way that I did it, is I just took 3 fingers and I wrapped this yarn around several times. Until I felt like it was going to be a nice fluffy tail. Clipped that off, and then you're going to cut yourself just a little piece of that yarn. You're going to pull it off of your fingers and hold it together, and then just tie that yarn around like so. And give it a couple of knots to hold it. And then you can kind of pull those loops out to fluff it up as needed. But that is going to give you your little bunny tail. So here is the finished pillow with his little tail on there. This is what your little back opening looks like here. That is how your pillow goes in and out. So there's no zippers to fuss with or anything. So this cover can be taken off. It can be washed if it gets dirty. If you're going to use this as an outdoor pillow, mine's going on my front porch, but my front porch is covered. If it's going to be somewhere where it's going to get exposed to a lot of weather, you probably want to use an outdoor upholstery material to make this. And I believe it's Scotch-Brite brand actually makes a spray for fabric. And you can put it on clothes, shoes, your pillows, your outdoor cushions, anything, and it makes them waterproof. It is kind of expensive. I think it's like $13 for a can, and I'm not sure how much a can will cover. But that is another option. If you can't find actual weatherproof upholstery, you could take this quilting cotton like we use today, and then you could spray that Scotch-Brite spray on it, and that would make it weatherproof also. But I wanted to show you up close. This is that satin stitching that we did on the machine, because I just realized I forgot to show you guys once it was done. But this is what it looks like. Just nice and butted up against each other, and it will be a little bit raised up off of the fabric. You can also applique things on just with that straight stitch that we used to begin with. Or there is a blanket stitch on the machine. That will also cover part of those raw edges. I just really like the way that the satin stitch looks. I think it looks a lot cleaner, and I know that those edges are completely covered, so they're not going to come unraveled underneath there. Another thing that I wanted to cover that I didn't, right before we did that stitching, I used the open toe foot on my machine. That's just a matter of personal preference. That's the one that's easiest for me to work with when I'm doing a satin stitch. But there is also a satin stitch presser foot that you can get for your machine. I have one. And there is an applique foot. Now both of those are not an open foot. They're closed, and you just kind of look down through the top of them. They usually are clear plastic. I have a hard time seeing down through the top of them to see where my needle is actually going into my fabric. That's why I like the open toe foot. But any of those are good options. Try all of them. See which one works best for you. Again, it's about personal preference. There really is no right or wrong way to do this. Just find what works for you and what's comfortable and what makes it easiest for you to get around all of those little curves and the nooks and crannies whenever you're doing that. And if a satin stitch is too much or it's too tedious, you can try a different applique stitch. But you can applique on pretty much anything. We did a pillowcase today. You could do this on shirts, pants, curtains, bed sheets, anything that you want to. Applique is a really great technique to learn, and it goes a lot faster when it's done on a machine. If you enjoyed this video or you learned anything new from it, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you enjoy the content that we make here on this channel and you have not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing also. And if you would like to make a monetary donation to the channel, you can do so through the Buy Me a Coffee link down in the description box below. That's never a necessary thing. You are not obligated to do it. If you feel that you would like to, that is an option that you can use for that. And I will see all of you guys in the next one.